I'm making the Linux leap of faith. I'm taking my daily driver laptop, which I've had for 4 years, and which has been running Windows 10 for all those years, and I'm just installing Linux onto it. I'm not dual booting, I'm not making any concessions. I'm literally taking out the SSD from my laptop and installing a fresh new SSD with just Linux on it. And this laptop isn't easy to take apart, by the way. It has Torx screws on it and some hidden screws as well. So I'm not even going to buy the tools to do that myself. I'm just going to use the tools I have at my university. So that really kind of locks me into using this full time. The timing is also inconvenient because I have a final exam in less than a week. So my main objective is to dive into Linux, get it up and running, at least with internet and Obsidian, which is what I use for notes, and just see if I can survive at least until the end of the exam. Even after the exam, I want to continue using it and just seeing how it feels. The reason I'm doing all of this is because I've been looking at Linux from the outside for quite a while, and it really does look interesting and cool and just something new. As for my choice of Linux distro, I'm using something called Archcraft, which from what I can tell, it's like Arch Linux, except a bit pre-configured, so it's easier to install out of the box. I want to go into this experience with an open mind and seeing what Linux has to offer. From what I see online, it requires a lot more configuration and a lot more troubleshooting, and it's very modular, which I kind of like, but it's also very rewarding, which I want to really get the benefit of. Worst case scenario, I still have Windows 10 on this SSD, so I can pop it back in and continue business as usual. Nothing lost. That being said, I don't want to give up prematurely, so I am going to force myself to use this at least until the end of this final exam period. Also, I do think that the raw amount of customization you can do with any Linux system is a big selling point, and I've noticed that me personally, I just like customizing and tinkering with some of my things. It can get unhealthy at times because I'll spend more time customizing an environment rather than doing actual work, but I'm hoping that this Linux experience gives me that helpful balance of enough customization, but still enough functionality to actually get work done. I got bad news and I got good news. The good news is that internet isn't actually that hard to set up on anything, so I don't even know why I was worried about that. But the bad news is that I can already tell that the switch from Windows to Linux is not going to be easy and straightforward. Even though I was prepared for configuration and all that stuff, I wasn't prepared for just raw incompatibility. So the main thing I'm worried about is the fact that I can't sync my Google Drive from my Google Drive to a local file system. So this is something you can easily do on Windows because there's a Google Drive app, but that app doesn't work on Linux. So I looked into a couple of workarounds and alternatives. The first being rclone, and the second being multiple variations of it, like G Drive, G Drive 2, and what's this one called? And Google Drive CamelFuse. So in general, the problem with these, I'm sure there are great tools and great utilities, but I think the problem is with Google, like most cases, because whenever I try to authenticate the tool and let Google know that, hey, I'm the one using this tool, let Google Drive send data to this tool because it's doing it for me, the security measures on Google just won't let me get through that stage. So pretty much I set everything up. I tried logging in on Google to say that, hey, everything's good. Let Google Drive work with this app. And it just says, sorry, no, can't do. So what that leaves me with now is a couple of choices and options. One, I can continue trying to make Google Drive work locally on my laptop, which is going to be very annoying and painful. Two, I can try just using a fully cloud-based note-taking app like maybe Notion, which I'm kind of hesitant about because I like Obsidian so much at this point. And then three is to look for a different cloud storage solution, which does work cross-platform on Linux, on Windows, on Mac, on whatever. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm debating which option to take. I do want to show you that I'm genuinely very excited to use a Linux-based system because it just looks so clean, so efficient, and I love the keyboard shortcuts and the way I can open everything. And of course, I can now say that I use Arch, by the way. So that's definitely a big plus. Okay, obviously I'm joking a bit there, but I just love the system so far, and I want to keep using it. I want to keep getting better at it. And yeah, so I'm excited to keep going with this and just learning more about the system. It's day 3 of my leap into Linux, and things have considerably calmed down from days 1 and 2 when things just weren't working out. And I think I have something to talk about, which is syncing and the ecosystem. I use my laptop to take notes and to look at the internet and to just do work in general. If I need to do something crazy intense like video editing or using SolidWorks or other engineering stuff, I'd go use my desktop instead because that has a much more powerful processor and much more RAM and so on and so forth. So the laptop really just needs to do two things. It needs to connect to the internet and provide a suitable interface for me to sync with my online files. And that's the reason why I felt syncing was a big issue in days 1 and day 2. So what I did instead to get all my Google Drive files locally onto my laptop for Obsidian to access is I use something called SyncThing. Basically, it's peer-to-peer file syncing. So it's a bit convoluted, but I took the Google Drive app on my Windows computer, turn that into a local folder on my Windows computer, and then use SyncThing to sync the folders between the Windows computer and the Linux laptop. I said sync way too many times in the past 2 minutes, but that's literally what it was, just syncing everything together. The disadvantages of SyncThing are that both laptop and computer have to be on at the same time and running the SyncThing program at the same time. It's not too bad because you can automate that process, but it is something to consider. It's not as simple as, having an internet connection and then mirroring files from the cloud. That being said, the advantage of SyncThing is that it's peer-to-peer, so that your data doesn't touch any third-party servers in the cloud somewhere. All it's doing is syncing the folders over your local network. So I don't know if this is a good long-term solution, but because I just need to get all my notes onto my laptop so I can study for my exam, it's worked so far. And essentially I have a functioning Linux laptop that I feel happy to use up until my exam at least. The real question is, how do I see the ecosystem after this, and how do I see the ecosystem in the long term? If Apple is like a walled garden, then Linux is like a lush rainforest. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, lots of biodiversity, but also a lot of poisonous snakes or whatever. There's a lot of dangerous creatures in there as well. So if you're willing to arm yourself, educate yourself, and learn the ways of the jungle, there is a lot you can get out of this lush rainforest. So much to learn, so much to discover, and so much to customize. But that all depends on what a computer is to you. And this is where I want to share my perspective. The way I see it, the way people perceive and use computers and tech is kind of on a spectrum. On one end, there are people that just want to use a tech, just want it to work, and just use it to get an output out of it. And on the other end, there are people that are really invested in the technology and they really care about the tools they use, and they're happy to spend lots of time customizing those tools and really becoming one with them. And of course, there's the whole range in between. So the question is, where do I see myself on that spectrum? And is there a right place to be? Me personally, I see myself more as a computer utilitarian, a computilitarian, if you will. I see the computer as a means to an end, to get some work done. But this little Linux experiment has kind of shifted me over closer to the other side of the spectrum. And that's because by giving me more control and making me more responsible for my operating system, I see the value in it. And the little things like using the terminal more often to install packages or being able to configure your desktop environment just the way you like it, it does feel really nice, and it gives me a lot of, what's the word? Not enjoyable. It's not always enjoyable. At times it's frustrating, but more real, if you know what I mean. All that being said, I think I still have a pretty hard limit of how much time and effort I want to invest into this Linux ecosystem and environment. Because at the end of the day, I still am more on the side of computer utilitarianism. If I find that it's taking way too much time to make sure my Linux environment is good to go, then I'm just going to drop it. And this is on the laptop, by the way, so I haven't even considered making my desktop a Linux system yet, because there's a lot more riding on that, and I don't, at this stage of my life, have the kind of time I need to be dealing with all that right now. I just don't see myself as a Linux enthusiast, and distro hopping is out of the question. I just don't want to get into that rabbit hole. Essentially, as long as Linux stays manageable and mostly stable, I feel comfortable using it for my laptop and reaping the rewards of feeling connected to my system. But the second it starts becoming more than that and starts becoming a hobby or a job, then I'm out. By the way, this whole thing of computers either as tools or as art or whatever, that's not gospel. That was more of a framework to try and express my perspective and my position in a kind of systematic way. Assuming that framework is valid, I don't think there's a right position to be. It all depends on your personal tendencies, how much you want to put into using a computer, how much you want to get out of it, and in general, just how you tend to use computers. To wrap this video up though, I think I'm going to be sticking with my Linux laptop for the near future at least. As long as the maintenance stays fairly low and I still get the cool customization factor and really enjoy using my laptop with it, then I think it's here to stay.